respond to that briefly at all?
Nope. Next question.
Oh, okay. Sorry for my heavy accent first. I am a recent immigrant to this country. And when we come here, all we see at the local, state, and federal level, all the black people are Democrats, including Mr. Obama. And what you are saying, if it is true, then how all these black intellectuals we consider and we look up to, are they all ignorant and they don't know what? Because from what you say, the Democrats are not friend of the slave black Africans. So I was wondering, are they really that ignorant?
This is the kind of question that I like a lot, because it actually pursues the premise that I put forward. If it is true that the Democratic Party was the party of slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, racial terrorism, the Ku Klux Klan, I assert that all of that is true. And why would it be that A, this fact would be downplayed, even by African American scholars, and B, why would they still be unapologetically loyal to the Democratic Party? Now, this is a very complicated question. I won't do full justice to it here. I'm actually writing about this now. But let me say a couple things. Ask yourself this question. It is true that African Americans as a group did move over from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. 90% of African Americans today vote Democratic. Here's the question. When did that shift occur? The general assumption is it must have occurred sometime in the 1960s, because Lyndon Johnson pushed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. African Americans now realize that the Democrats are our friends. Let's move over to the Democratic Party. But it turns out that this is, even though plausible, is actually not what happened. Blacks moved over to the Democratic Party in the 1930s. In 1932, Hoover got 2/3 of the black vote. But by 1936, 2/3 of the black vote went to FDR. In 4 years. In 4 years, blacks flipped from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. Now, amazingly, at this time, the Democratic Party was explicitly the party of segregation and the Ku Klux Klan. So blacks left the party of Lincoln and joined the party of the KKK in the 30s. Why did they do it? Well, the obvious answer to it, but it's not the answer that the progressives want to hear, is it was the economic promises of the New Deal. It was the heart of the Depression. Blacks lived in terrible circumstances. I don't fault them for a minute. But what I am saying is it was the economic benefits of the New Deal. Many New Deal programs were segregated. Many of them excluded blacks. But even so, the crumbs that FDR offered were apparently enough to convince a very downtrodden group to switch its political allegiances. So the reason this story is not known, it doesn't fit the narrative. Blacks are supposed to be finding their civil rights friends in the Democratic camp. That's not what happened. So what I'm getting at is, to ferret out the true story of America takes a little bit of work, but it takes a lot of intellectual bravery. And that intellectual bravery is really scarce in America today. You know, when someone like me stands up to say these things in a campus like Yale, we always have to worry, are we going to be allowed to speak? If we are allowed to speak, will we be shouted down? If we're not shouted down, will we be summarily dismissed without any effort to... I mean, I've put at least half a dozen very powerful facts on the table in just 30 minutes. Either I'm right or I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, show me. I'm as public a figure as you're going to find. It's going to be very easy to expose my facts as flawed on social media or anywhere else. No one does. No one does. And so what I'm suggesting is we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to re-examine. I'm an immigrant, as you are. When I first came to America, I went to Washington, D.C. in the 80s. I went to a reception by now Senator Schumer. He was then a congressman from New York. And it's a bunch of us Asian Indians. And he made a very interesting statement. He said, you Asian Indians, he goes, you never ask for anything. He goes, you just come to America, you work hard, you try to move ahead. He goes, you don't understand that that's why we're here. The Democratic Party is here so that you can make demands of us, and we will deliver for you in exchange for your vote. So I listened to this and I was like, could this really, is he actually saying this? But he was. He was actually offering the deal that the Democratic Party offers not just blacks, every ethnic group. They basically say, we want you to come together as a group. This is, by the way, why the Democrats are so big on race matters, because they need to have each minority group hang together, because they don't want to convince them individually. They want to get them as a group. And the politics of the Democrats are the politics of ethnic identity. Let's get the blacks, they're 12%. Let's get the Latinos, they're 13%. That's 25 right there. If we get the Asians, that's another 5. Then we're already at 30. We only have to get to 51. Maybe we'll get some feminists. Maybe we'll get some gay rights activists. Whoops, there we are. We've got a majority. So it is not a politics of the common good. It is a politics of cobbling together ethnic coalitions in order to loot the rest of the population. Once I figured that out, I had to exit.